Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we pull together all the sources, the articles, the research, your notes to give you, not just the essential facts, but those little insights that really make you feel like you get it.
And today, we are really getting into it. We're doing a deep dive on Stanley Kubrick.
Right. A name that, when you think of cinematic perfection or maybe obsession.
He's the name that comes up. And we have, a mountain of material to go through. We're looking at his whole life, really, from this young photographer all the way to, well, one of the most demanding directors ever.
And that's our mission here, for us and for you. We want to unpack how this self-taught guy managed to get, almost total artistic control in a system that's designed to prevent that.
Exactly. And how that meticulous, some would say obsessive approach led to these masterpieces that are just, they're so controversial and they completely transcend whatever genre he was working in.
We're not just looking at the films themselves, it's the system he built to make them, the method.
It's such a remarkable story because Kubrick becomes this, towering figure in the post-war film world, but he does it by basically escaping the Hollywood model entirely.
He was a master at adapting these really difficult novels.
So difficult. Nabokov, Anthony Burgess, Stephen King. And he jumped from genre to genre, crime noir, then a historical epic, then sci-fi, then horror.
And the key thing, the thing that almost no one else ever managed, was getting that complete artistic freedom while still having major studios pay for it.
That's the holy grail, isn't it? That combination of total independence and, massive financial backing. It's just so rare, and it's what allowed him to be such a perfectionist.
So his hallmarks are pretty much legend at this point.
Oh, absolutely. The intense, almost clinical attention to detail. The groundbreaking cinematography, that sort of detached, cold perspective he brought to these huge human struggles.
And the dark humor. You can't forget the humor.
The biting humor, yeah, that he weaves through even his most serious films. It's always there.
And if we want to get to the root of all this, his whole method, we can't even start with a movie camera. We have to go way back.
Way back to his hobbies. His path was so unconventional. He basically drops out of any kind of serious higher education.
So his real schooling was what he did in his spare time.
Completely. First, there was chess. He was obsessed with it, played for money in Washington Square Park all the time.
And he said that taught him patience, right?
Patience and discipline. He said it taught him to think several moves ahead, to see the whole board, which is, what a perfect analogy for directing a film.
It's the perfect analogy. And the second thing, of course, was photography.
Photography was everything. It wasn't just, something that influenced his visual style. It was his first job. It's where he learned composition, lighting, the power of a single image.
So you take the patience from chess and the visual discipline from photography.
And you've got the entire foundation for his whole career right there.
Okay, so let's dig into that. That foundational period, which starts a long, long way from a Hollywood film set.
Right. Stanley Kubrick was born in Manhattan in 1928, but he was raised in the Bronx. His family was Jewish, though he wasn't raised religious. His dad was a homeopathic doctor.
And what's so fascinating about his youth is this incredible disconnect.
The intellectual tension, yeah. The sources are really clear on this. He had an above-average IQ, clearly a gifted mind.
But he was a terrible student.
Awful, a D-plus average. He was just profoundly bored by the whole thing.
So it wasn't that he wasn't interested in learning, he just hated schooling.
Exactly. His real education was happening in the dark. He'd skip class all the time to go sit in movie theaters and watch double features.
And he was pretty scathing about the American school system later in life.
Oh, yeah. He said it was just fundamentally broken because it was all about rote memorization. It didn't encourage curiosity or critical thinking, which is all he cared about.
So the classroom fails him, but his father steps in with something that changes everything. A piece of technology.
The Graflex camera. His father buys him one when he's 13.
And this wasn't just a toy.
No, this was a serious piece of gear. And it was an immediate obsession. It just triggered this lifelong passion for photography. He had a neighbor with a darkroom, and he and this kid, Marvin Traub, would just spend hours in there, learning the whole process.
And they were out on the streets looking for subjects, developing that eye.
Actively looking. And he was already studying the masters. He was really influenced by the photojournalist Ouija, Arthur Fellig.
The guy who shot all that gritty New York crime stuff.
The raw, visceral, nighttime city life. And here's a great little piece of foreshadowing decades later when Kubrick is a world-famous director making Dr. Strangelove.
He hires Ouija.
He hires Ouija as a special stills photographer for the set. It just shows you how deep that early influence ran.
So his grades are terrible. He can't get into a normal day college. He does some evening classes for a bit.
But his mind is already somewhere else. He's totally focused on trying to make a living with his camera.
And in 1945, it happens. He sells his first photo series to Look magazine.
That's his big break. That's his entry into the professional world. And by 1946, he's a full-time staff photographer. He's, what, 18 years old?
Just a kid. And he's already known for not just taking photos, but telling stories with them.
The perfect example is that first series he published, a short story from a movie balcony.
What's so revealing about that?
The whole thing was staged. It looks like a candid moment of a guy getting slapped and reacting. But Kubrick set the whole thing up. He was already directing. He was manipulating reality to get the shot he wanted.
Moving from just documenting to composing?
Exactly. You see the same thing in another project where he had to take pictures of people in a dental office waiting room, just capturing these little moments of human anxiety in this really mundane setting.
Which feels very much like a shot from one of his later films.
It connects directly to those long, uncomfortable close-ups. And all this time he's also just devouring films at the Museum of Modern Art. He gets obsessed with the French director Max Ophuls.
What was it about Ophuls' style that grabbed him?
The camera movement. It was so fluid and complex. He said it felt like Ophuls' camera could go through every wall and every floor, just tracking the characters seamlessly.
He was also studying actors, too. He admired Elia Kazan.
Yeah, he said Kazan could work miracles with actors. He understood that the performance and the camera had to be in perfect sync.
So all this absorbing of technique, it leads him to this critical decision. He just decides to teach himself how to make movies.
He read every book he could find, even the really dense stuff from Soviet filmmakers like Eisenstein, and basically just concluded the best education in film is to make one.
I love that confidence. He apparently got it not from watching masterpieces, but from watching bad movies.
Yes. He'd see a bad film and think, I don't know a goddamn thing about movies, but I know I can make a better film than that. It's that mix of, sharp judgment and just total self-belief.
So he takes action, he uses his savings, gets some independent money, and makes a short documentary.
Day of the Fight, 1951. It's about a boxer named Walter Cartier. It cost him about $3,900 to make.
And he sells it to Archeopathe for $4,000.
He made a $100 profit on his very first film.
Wait, a profit on his first try?
A small one, yeah. But selling a short for that much money back then was a record. It was a huge success for a first-timer. And it already has one of his signature moves, that backward tracking shot.
So he immediately quits his job at Look.
Immediately. He's a full-time director now. He follows up with 2 more shorts pretty quickly. Flying Padre.
Which has these shots from a plane that feel weirdly like 2001.
They really do. And then The Seafarers in 1953, which was his first color film.
And The Seafarers is important because it shows his technical ambition growing.
You can see it right there. It has this early, really smooth dolly shot that establishes a whole community. It's the beginning of the tracking shots that would define his entire career. He's teaching himself the language of cinematic movement.
But then comes the jump to a full feature film, which is a huge leap.
A huge leap, and it's funded by his family. His uncle, a pharmacist, gives him $9,000 to make Fear and Desire in 1953.
It's this war allegory, shot on a tiny budget.
Tiny. About $53,000, which he still managed to go over budget on. Yeah. So he learned that lesson early. And the critics at the time, they actually liked it.
They praised the camera work, right?
Yeah, they saw artistic glimpses of something new. Yeah. But as soon as he got more experience,
they hated it.
He absolutely disowned it, called it a bumbling amateur film exercise. He spent years trying to buy up and destroy every copy. It's just the first perfect example of his impossibly high standards.
So his next one, Killer's Kiss, from 1955, he funded himself. A film noir.
And he's still doing everything. Directing, producing, editing, cinematography. He's just experimenting like crazy with camera angles.
And the interesting thing is the schedule. He shot it really fast, but then spent months on the sound and editing.
7 months. It tells you that from the very beginning, he believed the film was truly made in post-production. That's where the control was.
And it pays off. People notice the camera work. Martin Scorsese later said it was a big influence on Raging Bull.
It was. So this whole early period, it proves he can do 2 things. He can execute these complex visuals, and he can make money. And that gets him ready for the big show, Hollywood.
Which brings us to this next phase, where he starts building the professional machine he needs to make his vision a reality. And it all starts so perfectly over a game of chess.
In Washington Square Park, he meets a young producer named James B. Harris.
And Harris is just blown away by him.
Immediately, he called Kubrick the most intelligent, most creative person I have ever come in contact with. So in 1955, they form Harris-Kubrick Pictures.
Their first project is The Killing in 1956. It's a racetrack heist film, and this is his first time with a fully professional crew, which immediately causes problems.
Big problems. He wanted to shoot it himself, but the union rules wouldn't let him. So we have to hire a veteran cinematographer, Lucien Ballard.
And Kubrick is, what, 27 at this point?
And he immediately gets into a fight with this guy who's been in the business for decades, threatening to fire him over where to put the camera. It wasn't ego, it was just NK. He believed his vision was the right one, period.
And they shot it incredibly fast on a tight budget.
24 days for $330,000. It didn't do well at the box office initially, but its reputation just grew and grew.
Because of that non-linear story, right?
Yeah.
Flashing back and forth.
Yeah, people compared it to Orson Welles.
Yeah.
And now, it's seen as this huge influence. Quentin Tarantino always talks about it.
And The Killing gets the attention of MGM, which leads them to their first big studio picture, the anti-war film Paths of Glory.
1957. Stars Kirk Douglas. This is Kubrick's first real commercial and critical hit. But because it's this scathing attack on the French military during World War I, it was instantly controversial in Europe.
It was banned in France for years, wasn't it?
Banned until 1974. The French government thought it was an unflattering depiction of their military. The Swiss Army censored it, too.
But the production itself tells you everything about his method. That famous battle scene.
It's just an unbelievable piece of orchestration. He sets up 6 cameras in no man's land. And then he gives every single extra a number for a zone where they're supposed to die. So what looks like total chaos is actually choreographed down to the last man.
That level of control, though, that puts him on a collision course with the Hollywood machine.
A total collision course.
Huh.
Kirk Douglas was impressed with Paths of Glory, so he hires Kubrick to take over as director on Spartacus.
Which was this massive production already in trouble.
A completely different animal.
Ah.
A $6 million budget, 10,000 cast members. Kubrick's only 31. He's the youngest director to ever helm an epic like this.
And the clash with Douglas, who was the star and the producer, is just legendary.
They fought over everything. The script, creative control, and especially the pace. The studio system was built for speed.
Right. They wanted, 32 camera setups a day?
32, which is just an insane number. And Kubrick comes in and says, no, I need to do 2.
2. You can just imagine the studio executives' heads exploding.
They eventually compromised on 8, but the tension was it was toxic. Douglas later called him a talented shit.
Yeah.
Said he regretted hiring him.
He also apparently cut most of Douglas's lines from the first half hour of the movie.
He did. Yet, despite all that fighting, the film was a huge success, won 4 Oscars. And for Kubrick, it proved something. If he could survive that, he could survive anything.
But he knew he could never work that way again.
Ever again. And that leads to the most important decision of his entire career. He moves to England in 1961 and basically never comes back.
And the initial reason was financial, right?
Yeah, it was a mix of things. He had to shoot Lolita in the UK because of some contract stuff, but he also took advantage of something called the Edie plan. It was this great tax break you could get if most of your crew was British.
So his meticulous, high retake style suddenly became much cheaper to do in the UK.
Exactly. It was a smart financial move. But it was also about escaping the Hollywood system and, weirdly, his growing fear of crime in New York.
So in England, he creates his own little kingdom.
His fortress of solitude. He basically turns his home, Childwickbury Manor, into a studio. Writing, research, editing, all under one roof. And that's where he gets the total, absolute control he always wanted.
His first film there is Lolita in 1962, which is a major shift in style for him.
It's his first black comedy. It's this transitional film into the more surreal psychological stuff he'd do later.
And he had to deal with the censors because of the subject matter.
Oh, yeah. He had to strip out almost all the erotic stuff so it becomes this comedy about obsession rather than anything explicit.
But this is where he discovers Peter Sellers.
And he falls in love with him. He loved Sellers' range, and he actually encouraged him to improvise wildly. He'd set up 3 cameras just to make sure he caught every little thing Sellers did.
Which is the opposite of the control freak reputation.
It is. And that collaboration leads directly to Dr. Strangelove.
The 1964 masterpiece.
He'd become completely preoccupied with the threat of nuclear war. He started out wanting to make a serious thriller based on this book, Red Alert.
But the more he researched it, the more absurd he found it.
He found the whole idea of mutually assured destruction so fundamentally ridiculous that he realized a serious movie would actually be less believable than a comedy.
So he just flips the whole thing on its head, turns it into this outrageous black comedy full of sexual innuendo.
Co-written with the great satirist Terry Southern. And Sellers, of course, plays 3 different roles.
The film was a shock when it came out.
A huge shock. People thought it was revolutionary, but it got some really harsh reviews, too. One critic called it a shattering, sick joke, but it quickly became recognized for what it is, a comedy masterpiece. It proved Kubrick could take the most serious subject imaginable and turn it into something completely unique.
And that really brings us into the period where he becomes this technical god of cinema. It starts with his whole philosophy of directing.
Yeah, he only wanted to make films that mattered. He was obsessed with substance and form being equally important, and he wanted his films to appeal to every kind of viewer.
He believed in communicating subconsciously. He loved enigmas and allegories.
He thought that making a direct statement was just less powerful than letting the audience find the meaning for themselves. He wanted the film to be an experience that hits you on a deeper subconscious level.
Which leads to that style that people often call cold or detached.
It's very deliberate. He's not interested in specific character emotions as much as he is in these universal themes. Inherited evil, the birth of intelligence. You're watching humanity under a microscope.
But that's a risk, right? That coldness can push an audience away. Some people feel that way about Barry Lyndon or even 2001.
It's a valid criticism, but for him, the technical perfection was the emotional connection. The world had to be so perfectly rendered for the big ideas to land properly. And the absolute peak of that idea is 2001, A Space Odyssey.
Which took 5 years to make.
5 years. The theme is just immense. It's the birth of intelligence from ape to this star child, all guided by these silent black monoliths.
And the research was insane.
Staggering. He was talking to NASA scientists. He observed a NASA mission, all to make sure the physics and the look of the spacecraft were completely accurate. He wanted total realism, which made the unreal parts, like the monoliths, feel even more powerful.
And to get that realism, he had to basically invent new technology.
He did. The visual effects were groundbreaking. That slit-scan photography for the Stargate sequence, no one had ever seen anything like that. And the front screen projection for the Dawn of Man scenes looked so seamless.
He won his only personal Oscar for that, for visual effects.
Which is crazy when you think about it. But maybe the biggest artistic leap was the music. He had a full score commissioned from a composer, Alex North.
And he just threw it out.
Threw the whole thing out. He felt it was too conventional, too emotionally manipulative. He wanted the music to feel like it was coming from outside the story. So he switched to existing classical pieces.
Which is how we all now associate Richard Strauss's, also Sprach Zarathustra, with space.
He made that piece iconic. But he also introduced audiences to really challenging modern composers, like György Ligeti.
That eerie, buzzing music.
It's called micropolyphony. It's this dense, shifting sound that's really unsettling. It was the perfect sound for the cold, terrifying indifference of space. It was a genius move.
So after 5 years in the future, he goes all the way into the past with Barry Lyndon.
1975. An 18th century drama that became famous for his insane attention to historical detail. He was demanding 20, 30, sometimes way more retakes for a single shot.
And this is where we get to that amazing technical nugget. He wanted to shoot scenes lit only by candlelight.
To make it look like an 18th century painting. But that was basically impossible with the film and lenses they had.
So he finds a solution.
A crazy solution. He gets his hands on this special high-speed f1.7 lens made by Zeiss.
And where did this lens come from?
It was developed by NASA for taking pictures of the dark side of the moon, for spy satellites. He took space-age, military-grade technology and used it to make a period drama.
That is just unbelievable.
It's why the film looks so authentic. But shooting with that lens is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
The depth of field is so thin that if an actor moves an inch, they're out of focus.
And the production was apparently chaotic. He had to flee Ireland because of death threats from the IRA.
Yeah, he was creating this perfectly controlled world on set while dealing with real political danger outside. It's an incredible contrast.
After the 18th century, he jumps to modern horror with The Shining.
1980. Filmed almost entirely in England on these massive sets they built to look like the Overlook Hotel.
And this is where he pioneers another piece of technology, the Steadicam.
He wasn't the first to use it, but he was the first to really understand what it could do. He used it to get those fluid, gliding, tracking shots, Danny on his tricycle, the chase in the
It
maze.
makes you feel like you're a ghost floating through the hotel.
The inventor of the Steadicam said Kubrick was the first director who truly got its psychological potential. It created this sense of relentless, smooth pursuit that's so unsettling.
And of course, the stories about what he demanded from the actors on that film are legendary.
He pushed them to their absolute limit. Shelley Duvall said she felt abused by the process. She had to do that baseball bat scene 127 times.
127.
Another scene went to 148 takes. The theory is he was deliberately trying to exhaust her, to strip away the acting and get to a place of raw, genuine terror.
It's a method that is both brilliant and, frankly, terrifying.
It absolutely is. He was using psychological pressure as a directorial tool.
So let's talk more about that method, specifically the mystery of the multiple takes, because there was a philosophy behind it, right? It wasn't just sadism.
There was. I mean, his whole reputation is built on those stories of 50, 80, over 100 takes. And his stated goal was to get the actors to stop thinking about the performance, to exhaust their conscious mind and get them to a deeper, more instinctual place.
But he also said that the really high take counts usually only happened when actors showed up unprepared.
That's the key qualifier. He said, you cannot act without knowing dialogue. If they're struggling with the words, they can't get to the emotion. So the endless retakes were often a consequence of an actor not being ready.
And the best example that proves this is Arlie Ermey on Full Metal Jacket.
The perfect example. Ermey, who played the drill instructor, would nail his scenes in just 2 or 3 takes.
And why was that?
Because he was that character. He was a real drill instructor. He had said those lines with that intensity for years. Kubrick said it was like Ermey was already an actor because he had such total command of the material.
So it shows he was willing to be collaborative, even allow improvisation if the actor was fully prepared.
Exactly. He let Peter Sellers go wild. He loved it when Jack Nicholson came up with the "Here's Johnny" line. He wanted actors who could break the rules, but only after they had mastered them.
What about his technical control on set? He famously didn't put camera directions in the script.
Which is so strange for a control freak, right? But it's because he developed the visuals during rehearsal. He'd watch the actors block out a scene and then decide where the camera should go, what lens to use. It was an organic process.
But once he decided, that was it.
That was it. His cinematographer, John Alcott, called him the nearest thing to genius I've ever worked with. But his real passion, the part of filmmaking he said was truly unique, was the editing.
He thought the film could be made or broken in the editing room.
Completely. He would work 7 days a week, 18 hours a day, just cutting. He knew that in post-production, he could reshape everything. The performances, the rhythm, the entire meaning of a scene.
And that obsession extended to the sound, to the music.
The story about the duel scene in Barry Lyndon is just incredible. He spent 42 working days just listening to 17th and 18th century music to find the perfect piece. 42 days for one scene's music.
That's the definition of obsession. And that refusal to compromise continued right to the end of his career. He makes a Vietnam War film, Full Metal Jacket.
And shoots the whole thing within 30 miles of his house in England.
He imported palm trees.
200 palm trees from North Africa. He transformed a derelict gasworks in London into the war-torn city of Hue. It was just this massive act of engineering. He could build any world he wanted, wherever he was.
And he even played with his own style. He made the Steadicam shots in that film intentionally shaky.
Yeah, to get that newsreel effect, he would break his own rules if the story demanded it.
And then his final film, Eyes Wide Shut.
1999. He worked on it relentlessly for 15 months, 18 hours a day, in total secrecy.
And then just days after he showed the final cut to his family and to Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, he died.
A sudden heart attack. He never saw it released to the public. It's such a tragic, but also weirdly fitting end for a man whose control over his work was absolute right up to the very last minute.
And then there's this whole shadow career, right? The great movies he never made.
Which are almost as famous as the ones he did make, starting with Napoleon.
After 2001, he spent 2 years researching Napoleon's life. He was planning this enormous epic.
He wanted 40,000 infantry and 10,000 cavalry. He was literally planning to rent an entire country's army, probably Romania's, to stage the battles.
Yeah.
He had every single day of Napoleon's life cataloged.
So why didn't it happen?
It was just too expensive. And then another Napoleon film, Waterloo, came out and flopped at the box office, and the studio got cold feet and canceled it.
But the script was so detailed that Steven Spielberg is now turning it into a mini-series.
Which tells you how complete his preparation was. Then you have AI, artificial intelligence.
He worked on that for years, but then he gave it to Spielberg.
He did. In 1995, he told Spielberg that the story, which is kind of a dark fairy tale, was closer to Spielberg's sensibilities.
And Spielberg directed it after Kubrick died.
He did. He said it felt like he was being coached by a ghost. It's this incredible final collaboration between two masters.
And then there's the one that just seems impossible. The Beatles asked him to direct The Lord of the Rings.
And he said no. His reason was that he didn't want to make a film based on a book that was already so popular and beloved. He was always looking for challenge, something unexpected.
His legacy is just undeniable.
The film historian Robert Kolker said his films were more intellectually rigorous than the work of any other American filmmaker. And you feel that.
And the generations of directors he influenced, though. Scorsese, Christopher Nolan, David Fincher.
Spielberg called 2001 the big bang for their generation of filmmakers.
And his influence is everywhere in pop culture. The sources say that The Simpsons has more references to Kubrick's films than to any other single thing.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
And the BAFTA Lifetime Achievement Award is now named after him.
Yeah.
He just built this incredible body of work by constantly refusing to repeat himself, always creating these complex, intelligent films.
So what does this all mean for you, the well-informed listener? We've traced Stanley Kubrick's extraordinary self-taught journey from a Bronx photographer who honed his patience through chess to a cinematic master who demanded and achieved a singular artistic vision. He pushed technical boundaries in every single film, whether that was repurposing a NASA-developed lens for candlelight filming in Barry Lyndon, pioneering the fluid Steadicam in The Shining, or introducing challenging modern classical music in 2001. His greatest trick was acquiring major Hollywood financial backing while operating outside its creative control, allowing him to be the ultimate sovereign of his cinematic universe.
He was an artist who chose films that mattered, treating genre not as a stylistic restriction, but as a vessel for examining the universal, often dark, elements of human nature. His dedication to exhaustive research, his mastery of the editing room, and his firm belief that the audience should discover the meaning for themselves is why his films remain so endlessly fascinating and intellectually rigorous, compelling us to return to them decades later. He never stopped learning, refining, and utilizing the absolute best, most cutting-edge technology available.
Here's a final thought for you to consider. Kubrick's entire career was driven by his commitment to maximizing technical perfection and control, ensuring he could render the worlds exactly as he saw them in his head. Considering his obsession with everything from satellite lenses to stabilized camera rigs and the final moments of editing, what single piece of technology, unavailable during his lifetime, think about the pace, the control, the immediate feedback it might offer, would have most fascinated and revolutionized the way he made films today? Think about that commitment to total visual control and what tool he'd be using to exert it now.
A fascinating question about a man who was always chasing the next technological edge.
That's it for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.